Hiya! Nope, didn't pod fade, just lots going on here. Welcome us all back to this, my 84th episode of VideoFuzzy. I'm your host, Terry J. Aman, sifting my basket of media memories, remembering, first and foremost, I have a podcast. Wow, first new episode since July, sorry about that. In this installment, titled The Lost Room, I encountered with no small amount of joy the 2006 sci-fi miniseries of that name, plus some Agatha Christie commentary, lots of streaming. Hell, just cue the theme here. He doesn't have it on video, does he? We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy. Okay, since last we spoke, there have been great doings at SciFi. Completely unexpected. First week in August, our water heater came away from the intake feed, and we had gallons of water gushing all over our basement by the time we get it shut off. Insurance had a mitigation team within an hour, tore out the flooring, and the whole following week had industrial fans and dehumidifiers running constantly, getting us dried out. We got the water heater replaced, fresh, clean carpeting laid in. The space looks great, nice and bright. Best it's looked since before we moved in, for sure. It's fun because within the first few episodes of this podcast, we had a pipe burst in our kitchen, got our home replumbed. Then a couple of years ago, I included a few seconds of what installation of our new roof sounded like. Now our new flooring is in. We've got a fresh new basement, kinda, and y'all have been along for the whole adventure. I talked about scrapbooking last time, which, yeah, I think it was the longest I've gone between episodes since I started, but I feel like I needed this time. While our show was going on, Capital Shakespeare's The Merry Wives of Windsor, I felt like a lot of my free time and energy was bespoke somehow. I mean, not inordinately, but there's a time in my life when every spare moment I had was setting something ready for production, and that time was a couple different lifetimes ago. So once my time became my own once again, I needed to celebrate that, get after a few projects that needed some attention around here. I switched out the lopsided Christmas tree box in our front room, masquerading as furniture with a cabinet lashed together using scrap beadboard. More than anything, this project convinced me I need a workbench in our back entryway, but there's no rush on that. I also put a scrapbook together with all the clippings and programs I could find, titled Voices I've Had, People I've Been, with cover art I made from iridescent watercolors. I had a good collection to start with, and I've got a few gaps to fill in as I'm able. And right on cue, Capital Shakespeare just posted Merry Wives to its YouTube channel. The link's in the show notes. If you get a chance, check it out. Speaking of my hosting service for this updated our web pages, I think they're still ironing out some kinks, but it's looking spiffy. And knowing it needs to be done, I just started remastering my back catalog. This will be a continuing work in progress. I've managed the first 5 so far. I was just going to address sound levels and sibilance, but listening to them and discovering other serious shortcomings, so as I am able to, they are getting addressed. And I could spend a lot more time on these and 1,000 other projects right now, but my last installment dropped about 3 months ago, so without 1 second further ado. And now, VideoFuzzy presents Fuzzy Feature. I'd anticipated leading with Warehouse 13 or Flash Forward or any number of other shows that now seem to be permanently on the back burner, but when I popped in disc 1364 of my classic collection, I encountered one of the more compelling reasons I'm even doing this. I found my recording of The Lost Room. The sci-fi miniseries The Lost Room aired in 2006. It was one of those shows that was written specifically for me to enjoy. Peter Krause stars as Joe Miller, a New York City police detective pursuing a dust-up at a pawn shop. Lots of charred remains in the aftermath of explosions, but strangely without the presence of any explosive materials. Joe is in pursuit of a suspect, Antonio, who seems to vanish behind any door that closes behind him. As Joe's reviewing security footage, it looks like Antonio's disappearing into rooms he's not even entering. And when Joe finally takes him into custody, he sees the old-school hotel key that Antonio's using before he grabs and makes a dash for it. He turns up later, much the worse for wear, in Joe's apartment, which Joe shares with his daughter, Anna, played by the adorable Elle Fanning. As his final act before dying, he gives Joe the key. Joe, at this point, knows there's strange goings-on surrounding this key in the pawn shop he first encountered it. Any door with a hinge and a lock, the key opens into the lost room, room 10. Then, if you think really hard about a place, the far door opens there, so the room is kind of a teleport. While he's investigating the pawn shop, Anna starts playing with the key, making connections like if you mess up the room, the key resets it. If you put new stuff in the room, it disappears in the reset. Unfortunately, Joe learns this in the hardest possible way when Roger Bart, as the Weasel, one of the bad guys from the pawn shop, tracks the key to him. Joe puts his daughter in the room to keep her safe while he fights the guy, but the Weasel somehow gets his hands on the key and resets the room with Anna in it. So Joe's got to find Anna before the custody hearing with his ex. No judge is going to believe that she was cleared away via mystical stagecraft, and he's got to navigate a web of intrigue woven among the many people interested in this room and the objects inside. His quest begun in earnest, Joe encounters people who collect the objects, who track the objects, who are obsessed with the objects. The mystery as it unfolds is fantastic. The room belonged to a motel in New Mexico where, near as anyone can make out, an event happened in 1959, ripping a hole in space-time and swallowing room 10 and everything in it, pulling them all out of history. This room contained a collection of defiantly mundane objects that were suddenly and mysteriously infused with mystical energies. They'd estimated there were about 100 or so, and way more than the teleportery room key. A plastic comb, if you comb your hair with it, stops time for a few seconds. The ballpoint pen emits a burst of explosive force. In fact, the source of the explosions at the pawn shop. A watch, if you put an egg inside the wristband, hard cooks the egg. They're not all equally impressive. However, someone figured out that the objects can be combined to give the user different, even greater powers, like if you have the watch and the comb, you get some form of telepathy. Joe discovers if you bring objects into the room, they lose their powers, but that's only inside the lost room. There's a Polaroid picture. If you take it to the space where the room had been, you can use it to see the room as it appeared the night of the event, which object hunters used to piece together clues to what happened, and which Joe used to discover something called the prime object. More on that in a bit. Having become a newly minted object hunter himself, Joe's search leads him to Julianna Margulies as Jennifer Bloom, part of a loose-knit group of object hunters. Harriet Sansom Harris plays a cult leader who believes the objects, once reunited, will reveal the face of God. Kevin Pollak plays a wealthy object hunter whose interest in the objects is of a much narrower focus. He believes in the right combination they can resurrect his son. Joe navigates shifting alliances, including some quirky run-ins with randos who use objects drive people crazy or go into hiding or disappear their enemies. There's a desperate idea that if he finds the prime object, the occupant, that he can get his daughter back, and he feels he needs to see it through. The Lost Room, if you'll forgive the Python reference, is the original 18-room villa overlooking Nice. It works because you suspend the disbelief. The way the story is organized, they've done a lot of the heavy lifting, and it's obviously fantastic. It helps not to know exactly what's going on when you're dealing with the floppiness in the first installment. There's no especially good reason for Antonio's path to continue to intersect with Joe or for him to show up in Joe's apartment. There's no especially good reason for Anna to be caught in the crossfire between Joe and the Weasel. There's no obvious way for Joe to get his hands on the teleporting bus ticket, and the rules we learn about the time-stopping comb are broken multiple times in its first appearance before we learn them. That's probably fine, since I cannot think of one single way an otherwise ordinary hotel room could vanish in 1959 and imbue a junk drawer's worth of objects with magical powers. A glass eye restores health, a deck of playing cards drives you crazy, a quarter brings memories to life, and using them can get you to a hidden vault in an abandoned state pen where even more mystical objects are stored. It all reads like fantastic sci-fi fantasy, but do not look at it too hard. This miniseries relies entirely on pretty people with sharp to find goals who, by several twists of fate, discovered some object or talisman, elusive, forever just out of reach, can make their dreams come true. Caught up in the mythos, Joe does the exact same thing, using the objects in his attempt to recover his daughter and all the steps involved with that. It's the same with souvenirs or other talismans. Remembers, it was so cool to kick back and watch this miniseries. I say recently, but it was months ago now. I let it play while I compiled my scrapbook for theater clippings I talked about up there. Also kind of neat. There were some clips I couldn't find. I'll have to track down when I get a chance, but it occurred to me when you're the features editor in a play you're in as taking the stage, you do get to decide what photos you use and if you're in them. I countered by noting local theater consistently took top billing, and my argument being theater is among the more ephemeral of art forms. I can read any novel, enjoy any poem, consume any media. Someone crafts a painting, a drawing, a sculpture, architecture. We can look at it forever. Someone plays music or sings a song. I can call it up on my phone at any time. But use and copyright laws are such that with a few public domain exceptions, and obviously motion picture productions, we're not allowed to retain video from performances. A theater makes extraordinary demands on its audience. You have to leave your home, gather in a space, encounter the story that's being told to you in real time. At the end of the run, the lights are gone, the set is struck, the actors disperse, the stage is bare, and nothing remains save memories. I kept scripts for most of the shows I've been in. Anyone can buy and read them, but even with a script, no one can hear the panic in Marvin's voice as his wife walks in to find him with a comatose hooker in Neil Simon's California suite. That was craft. No one, by turning pages, can see Elliot Crummels fall flat on his face in the guise of Jacob Marley, one of dozens of characters he's presenting in A Hopeless Christmas Carol. That's just art. Most of my roles have been produced via special arrangement with some script service or another, and most of those arrangements bar recording of any kind, audio or video. So once the show is over, it's gone. There was one production we were in, the newspaper uploaded video clips from a rehearsal, and the script service called, that day and demanded we take them down. I don't remember what happened, but it feels like we probably had to, despite our being a news service covering local news. But yeah, all that's to say, all anyone might see of a theater production is a story in the newspaper, so I tried to include as many photos as I had space for, and if I was in them, I didn't mind so much. I had 52 art sections a year and crammed as many local events into them as I was in any way able to, and given the limitations of the media, I felt good about what I accomplished. A difference from when I first watched The Lost Room and now occurred to me at work, actually. One of my tasks is to prep rooms for patients. When we know what new admit needs, I'm responsible for preparing the right frame with the needed mattress and collecting whatever equipment furnishings are required for patient care. The idea that a room would reset itself to a basic state of readiness with a magical key feels incredibly helpful to me.
Studio Murphy Under Challenge.
Naturally, there is no daylight for my Studio Murphy Under challenge. Peter Krause's involvement puts The Lost Room 0 steps from 6 feet under. It's interesting, though, that on the Studio 60 side, Kevin Pollak is barely a step away with Aaron Sorkin's A Few Good Men. Peter Jacobson is intriguing. He's all over my collection. He seems to share multiple credits alongside Julianna Margulies, actually, but what stood out for me was its involvement in the 2019 adaptation of Donna Tartt's richly written work, The Goldfinch, which I really must watch sometime. People have piles of books on their bedsides that they read. I've got piles of movies I must watch sometime. As I do, I'm sure I'll discuss them. Cross Connection. In other cross-connections, on disc 1351 I found Kurtwood Smith from 24 and more from That 70s Show, the 6th season premiere of Medium. Kurt Fuller of Supernatural in this set, disc 1367. I found his debut as Woody the Coroner in an episode of Psych featuring Kenan Thompson and Jaleel White. The story put them in a close harmony group with Gus when they were in college, and the theme song for that one was sung by Boyz II Men. Fun find. On disc 1352, I also found Fuller at an episode of Glee, along with the debut of Good Place doorman Mike O'Malley as Kurt Hummel's dad. That episode, Kurt sings Single Ladies as a kicker for the football team. Pinning that for the moment. Then on disc 1368, also on Glee, I found Kristen Chenoweth as April Rhodes singing Carrie Underwood's last name. I mean, seriously. And speaking of Glee, as I am, I ran into Artie, a Kevin McHale, saw him in American Horror Stories. It was an episode for the first season, actually, the Bro House episode with Danny Machete Trejo, but I was only just now catching up with it this past summer. Of course, Glee and American Horror Stories are both Ryan Murphy productions, so it's all right there in Studio Murphy under. Disc 1353, I found a second season episode of Close to Home featuring Misha Collin, also from Supernatural, better in Supernatural, and there was a third season episode of Numbers featuring both Bill Nye the Science Guy and a pre-Mad Men John Hamm. Then on Disc 1361, another third season Numbers episode featured Buzz Aldrin. Disc 1356, I found Erica Gimple of Fame in an episode of Criminal Minds. Disc 1359, I found Marion Ross, a fourth season episode of Brothers and Sisters, so I was apparently still archiving that. And on Disc 1362, I find James Pickens Jr. of Grey's Anatomy debuting a recurring character in a second season episode of 6 Feet Under. Nice. On Disc 1369, I encountered Michael B. Jordan, Cam's boyfriend, in a fifth season episode of Bones. Very nice. I also found Jim O'Hare of Parks and Rec on Disc 1368 in the second season episode of Castle. I ran into him most recently in a final season episode of Better Call Saul. Great work. Then, speaking of Castle, I found Santa Koenig in the fifth season episode of 24, along with Phoebe Woodside, Buffy, Henry Ian Cusick of Lost, and Ray Wise out. Have I not done Ray Wise yet? It would appear that I have not. Golden With nearly 250 credits, the man shows up all over the place. I know for certain he's a substantial presence throughout my media archive. Now, it's coming up, there's a good chance I saw him in Charlie's Angels, Barnaby Jones, Lou Grant, almost certainly in Heart to Heart, Riptide, Trapper John M.D., Remington Steele, Scarecrow and Mrs. King, Hunter. I'm pretty sure I watched the Beauty and the Beast series that ran in 1987. He appeared in the pilot of that. I almost certainly saw him in Moonlighting, Star Trek Next Generation. Might have seen him in Star Trek Voyager. There he is at Sports Night. Moving into where he's probably in my archives, would have seen him in The West Wing, Mansion 24. I got him in The Closer, Bones, Burn Notice, Numbers, Reaper, Drop Dead Diva, Dollhouse, Castle, The Good Guys, Mr. Sunshine, Chuck, Rizzolian Isles, maybe, almost certainly not The Criminal Minds he was in, probably not The Body of Proof he was in, not all of them, but definitely his appearances in a couple different characters in Psych, and that, and for sure the episodes of Fargo he was in. Good stuff. Ray Wise is biting into an orange after brushing your teeth. He has every toothed thing has ever had, and a blinding smile that charms and somehow distracts you while he steals a letter from your name. The man is odd. I know this while never having watched an episode of Twin Peaks. I know David Lynch cast him for a reason. Not at all surprised to see him in the Trekverse. Some people do their own stunts. Ray Wise does his own CGI. I am saying all these things with love and amazement. Ray is good. He couldn't teach an acting class. I've never seen him play anyone but himself, but for all that, he is an extraordinary storyteller, perfect wherever he shows up. By now, he knows that's why he's there, and is unquestionably there. I was so surprised to see that he was ever in Supernatural that I've decided that he was, at least the inspiration for Leviathan. The man is an astonishing presence, and I look forward to seeing him wherever I might. Diving into my classic collection. I covered a lot of my discoveries in cross connections, but not every single one of them. In my classic collection VHS to DVD transfers for this set, discs 1351 through 1375, I found the 2009 MTV Video Music Awards, which, if memory serves, yay?
Taylor, I'm really happy for you. I'll let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time. One of the best videos of all time.
I appreciate that. Just gotta check motives on everything with this guy. Anyway, this was also the first VMA's post-international superstar and king of pop Michael Jackson's death, and Madonna stepped forward and shared memories of her time with Michael near the beginning of their careers, how he grew up in the public eye and never really had a childhood, what that could do to someone emotionally, and, well, it's been months since I saw this. Literally everything in here is from notes for me trying to recall. Not a great idea to let so much time pass in putting these together, but post this touching tribute, we got a selection of Michael Jackson videos, dance numbers, and his duet performance with sister Janet Jackson, Scream, Janet performing her half live on the BMA stage. I remembered all of them, but I love that futuristic space pod duet. Most recently, I've enjoyed the 2020 Spike Lee remastered version of Jackson's 1995 They Don't Care About Us video, cutting in footage from Black Lives Matter demonstrations around the world. Kind of amazing. That link is in my show notes. Moving on from the King of Pop to Queen, Katy Perry covered We Will Rock You to introduce host for the evening, Russell Brand. I mentioned the Kanye thing. I got it at time code 11745 on disc 1351. Him hopping up on stage, swiping the mic from Taylor Swift, accepting her very first VMA to flap on about Beyonce. Both were like, what? Beyonce knows, my dude. This was Tay's moment. Her subway performance into the theater was a rockin' out cut of You Belong With Me. Not bad at all. Tried maybe a little too hard, but what the hell, it was her debut. Also making an entrance, Lady Gaga took the stage with performances of Poker Face and Paparazzi. Her performance opened beneath a giant chandelier installation, crashed on the stage, and closed death mask suspended from a high wire. So, yeah, despite Pink also debuting her high wire performance of Sober at the same VMAs, Lady Gaga's halftime Energy Stadium production a few years ago didn't come completely out of nowhere. No. She was later named Best New Artist, and Beyonce won Video of the Year for Oh Hey, Single Ladies, I mentioned up there, featured a few times in Glee with Kurt joining the football team as a kicker. It was Dad, Bert, played by Michael O'Malley, would think he was straight after he caught him dancing, that is, working out to the song, complete with choreography from the video. When Kurt came out to him, Bert told him he'd known, and left him anyway. But I will say the way they wrote him, Bert was kind of unreadable for at least the first part of that episode. I mentioned Beyonce won Video of the Year for Single Ladies. Well, she very graciously shared her moment with Taylor Swift, inviting her back onto the stage to give the acceptance speech opportunity she'd been denied, and in this intangible way kind of benefited from Kanye's boorish behavior, which is not to in any way condone it.
I'm really happy for you. I'll let you finish.
Dude, how about you just finish, yeah? Roger Stone cynically throwing your name into the ring for 2024. Damn, people should know when they're being manipulated. That shady bat villain who ran dirty tricks for Tricky Dick is encouraging me, a personally and fiscally unstable artist/entrepreneur, to run for president. I mean, I'd totally rock as president given how well I manage every other aspect of my life. I mean, could there possibly be any downside to this? There's a compliment I heard recently I don't have attribution for beyond something I read online. No reason at all. I'll share it right here. Wisdom has been chasing you, but you have always been faster. Like I said, no reason. Just makes me giggle. Anyways, this set opened with music videos. It's only fitting to close with them. Disc 1375, I found a video for Snow, Hey-O by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. The song is a light, deceptively easygoing vibe that stayed in my head for days after I found it in this set. Live performance was intercut with dozens of tiny close-up black and white clips of fans who, per Wikipedia, attended their concert in East Rutherford, New Jersey in October of 2006. I thought while watching it, a nice little time capsule, these people and their friendships caught forever at this moment in time. Some couples, some friends, maybe lifelong, maybe they've since broken up, maybe people haven't seen each other since that night, and the only record of this interaction is this music video. I freaking loved this. It's so human and nice. Rock on, you guys. Checking out my current collection. I had many other things to talk about in this hilarious commercial featuring dust fluffs of apparently Hispanic origin, excitedly discussing gaming and employment opportunities on a PS2. I found another featuring Jared selling Subway, and saw an episode of Psych featuring Richard Kind, but really needed to get onto my current direct digital collection, including Oh wow, do not do this to my heart. On September 11th, moments after we learned the Queen's passing, Carol Burnett was trending on Twitter, and I was like, oh god, no. And it wasn't, apart from a brilliant turn in the closing episodes of Better Call Saul. Fans wanted her to appear on Saturday Night Live, and that was what was going on. Better Call Saul, I guess, spoilers if you enjoy the show, but still haven't seen the finale. They aired months ago now. In Breaking Bad, Walt died. There was a mess. I'm guessing Skylar Flynn and Holly caught some of that. Marie was, again, at the end of Better Call Saul, Marie was a seething ball of rage. Jesse took the vacuum guy's do-over deal and fled to Alaska at the edge of El Camino. Kim, it feels like, escaped more or less unscathed, despite turning herself into Howart's widow for the shenanigans surrounding his death. Kim was still free to visit Saul, well, Jimmy, in prison. Better Call Saul ended mid-August. I put some thoughts together at the time. He just could not help himself, could he? I swear, he should be dead in so many ways. He should be in jail in all the other ways. This guy, when Vince Gilligan created this character, gave him all the fatal flaws. It must have been hard to pick just one. He was never going to be boring. Watching this guy get himself into ridiculous situations and clever his way out of them has been a blast. He's got this long history of low-level con artist behavior. He sold burner phones to ne'er-do-wells. What exactly is going on in the personality? The law, it's like right there with a capital L. He got it nailed in hard enough to pass the bar exam, then tried to work with his straight-edge brother Charles. Charles knew exactly who Jimmy was. James McGill, Slippin' Jimmy, doing business at Saul Goodman. The scams he ran with Kim Wexler when they were associates for HMM, how the hell did they keep that quiet? If either of them had been made as officers of the court, they'd have been out, disbarred, there goes their livelihood, charged with crimes. Nothing tied them to New Mexico exactly, but the nursing home cases, I don't remember well enough what was going on with them, but put up against this breaking and entering thing Jimmy was involved with, or the embezzlers, the whole thing with Lalo. I mean, how the hell did his license survive that? Then watching him running his high-end shoplifting scam progress into this stolen ID thing, the marks are classic Kim and Jimmy style stuff. I mean, usually they hit higher-end marks. I guess he'd work with those two paint huffers, but wow, Gene, whatever, you gotta develop a better story for Marion. Carol Burnett showing up here as Marion. She is sharp while you'd be hanging out with her son. I mean, it's all brilliant, and then you go too far, and isn't that always the way? You get bored, you want some excitement, you go for it. Oh hey, sometimes you need to disappear and make Cinnabons in a new town with a new name, and apparently you can't have any fun at all. But he'd gotten away with it, helping Walter White organize things, his income, his everything, along with those side hustles. When things got too hot, he had a new life to hop into. I don't know that there's a vacuum repair guy in Omaha, but he had all those stolen identities. He could be one of them for a while if he had to be. In the end, he was brought down by simple human decency. Cohort unwilling to scam a cancer patient, leading to uncontrolled improvisation. Marion's suspicious mind gets the local cops involved, and turns out they're very interested in Saul Goodman and hiding in a dumpster post of freshly fallen snow. It's like the whole universe is pointing, there he is, officers. Saul's endgame wasn't perfect, but it was more satisfying than AMC's other Breaking Bad-themed production, Annie Murphy and Kevin Can F Himself, a show created by Valerie Armstrong. It looks like Rashida Jones stepped down as executive producer this season, which, I don't know, could have contributed to the darkness somewhat. Season 1, the show seemed to have more direction, though it's always been chaotic. Murphy played Allison McRoberts, who wanted to move from their vermin-infested home upon discovering hubby Kevin blown through their entire life savings for garbage sports memorabilia, including all the money she'd been setting aside for a new home, determines in a fit of rage she needs to kill him. She sees a drug overdose get zero attention from the Worcester PD and determines that's how she'll do it, especially once she learns her next-door neighbor Patty is a dealer. Oh, for years now, except that exact second Patty's source dries up, and Allison trying to kill Kevin isn't the only issue she's got. A tweaker is sniffing around for a fix, and Allison has the brilliant idea for the tweaker to kill Kevin in exchange for drugs. About this time, Patty's getting involved with a relationship with Tammy, the detective investigating her connection. Security footage connects her to a trucker she mugged for Oxy, and Neil, Patty's brother and Kevin's best friend, overhears Allison's plan to kill Kevin. Yeah, that's all season 1. It's all over the friggin' place. I forgot to mention Allison's casual cocaine use, but when we come back for season 2, the focus is on Neil. They tie him up in, I think it was Patty's basement. Patty smashed him over the head because he was strangling Allison. He's profoundly concussed and gets admitted for observation. Oh, Neil is an agent of chaos this season. He hooks up with Allison's aunt, Diana, a woman trying not nearly hard enough to escape an abusive marriage. He has some kind of tantrum hockey rink gets him and Patty banned. Even told Kevin about Allison's plan to kill him. That just rolled right off Kevin's brain. It's a marriage, he said, no one gets out alive. And Kevin's developing this Worcester wild man persona at the same time he's antagonizing his dad's new girlfriend. That's Lorraine, Pete and Lorraine there, and plunging the neighborhood into darkness with the cockamamie fireworks fiasco. Allison pivots from killing Kevin to faking her own death, which goes actually pretty well. She swipes a dead woman's death certificate and moves to Maine under her name, Gertrude French. She's there for 6 months and Kevin hasn't even bothered about her. He bought that Allison went out hiking one day and died. He's already dating. Allison is working at a consignment store. Between that and the pile of cash Diane gave her as a gift to start her new life, she can spend all her free time sipping lattes at a sidewalk cafe and be fine. Well, Tammy tracked her down. Don't ask me how. The Worcester PD can't figure out Kevin is behind most of the Homer Simpson levels of community destruction around there, despite someone's out there calling all kinds of attention to some Worcester wildman persona. Allison comes back to town and confronts Kevin, who, isolated in the wake of everyone in his life, has turned their backs on him, sets fire to his home, and dies in it. This is unsatisfying somehow. The problem with Kevin isn't that he is alive, it is that he is a selfish pig who barely acknowledged anyone's existence outside his own, and consequence of his ridiculous actions fell on everyone but himself. Allison had managed to escape a demonstrably miserable existence for a fresh start. Her ending is fantastic. Kevin would continue to be awful and she wouldn't have to put up with it anymore. It's brilliant. I mean, obviously, it's important that she reconnected with Patty, but every other person in her life, including Patty, was telling her to pull up stakes and get out. It's not a bad move. Honestly, what this show did better than anything is to shine a light on what-ifs. What if you take some initiative and stand up to bullies in your life? What if you decide to stop being lonely, stop being actively unfulfilled, and explore this exciting new person who's taking an interest in you? What if you run for office? What if you end the loveless marriage? What if you leave the abusive relationship? For all the fresh new possibilities the show explored, Kevin Can F Himself was bleak. I'm really glad they didn't go for a third season and pull a lot of new layers of criminal activity into the mix. I mean, it was already plenty unbelievable, all the stuff Tammy had to ignore just to keep dating Patty, just to keep from arresting her. And sadly enough, even in her confrontation, Allison gets defined by negative space. Kevin's the one who burned down his house in a bit of drunken, brooding self-destruction, and you know full well insurance lapsed on that thing years ago. Allison ended up next door trying to help Patty pick up some of the emotional pieces as the flames consumed the last 10 years of her life, and wherever it went from there, for all the stuff he did, Kevin could, for sure, absolutely F himself. I've watched so many more things. Only Murders in the Building on Hulu. Second season closed quite strong. Check that out if you're able. BJ Novak's The Premise. Absolutely brilliant. American Horror Stories. Kind of meh. I know the series will be returning here pretty soon. That'll likely be better. The short stories are fine, but I think they do a better job with the series-length explorations. What else? Well, I've been watching The Patient on Hulu. Holy Christ, Steve Carell is totally a fantastic job in that. Also on Hulu, I've been enjoying the anti-sitcom Reboot. Paul Reiser, Keegan-Michael Key, Judy Greer in that, Johnny Knoxville, Rachel Bloom. Funniest damn show. Check that out. Kung Fu is back for a third season on CW. I'm mostly watching that for the buffier aspects. It's very watchable, but Nikki's power is hopelessly inconsistent. After everything we've seen her do in that series, those appliance-stealing henchfolk should have been stains on the wall when she confronted them. But, like I said, it's very watchable. What I've been watching. And moving beyond the archive, I've got dueling Scaletta recommendations. A couple years back, Kelly Scaletta, that is friend and brother, good friend and friend of the pod, Curtis Scaletta, insisted I watch Ted Lasso. He wanted to stand me to an AppleTV subscription to make it happen. I resisted, but since I've got the subscription now anyway, I just pulled it up. I remain helplessly unmoved. I saw the ownership of mediocre UK football and concern change hands in the messy divorce, and Ted, who'd helmed one successful season of American college football through what we were introduced to as his ineffably unorthodox positivity, is brought over to manage AFC Richmond. And we learn at the end of the pilot episode the owner chose him specifically so as to fail spectacularly. There's a lot of fish out of water gaffes and goofs. His press conference, basically, as he steps off the plane, is insane. The fan reaction to absolutely everything is blistering outrage, and this doesn't seem like it's off to an especially promising start. I guess stuff other people find to be bust-a-gut funny. I mean, I know people love this show. I'm just not one of them. I was much more impressed with Curtis's recommendation of the morning show, also on Apple TV, because journalism, for one thing, because cynical fiscal motivations behind programming, for another. I mean, they were exploring these questions in the pilot episode. That is exciting to me. That around the edges of the primary story, which is Jennifer Aniston's morning show anchor character Alex is spun when her morning show co-host Steve Carell's character Mitch is yanked on #MeToo accusations of apparently sufficient credibility to merit a top-level shakeup at a top-rated morning show. Meanwhile, Reese Witherspoon plays Bradley, a reporter at a regional affiliate who goes viral for confronting low-information demonstrators at a coal mine protest in wherever. Alex invites Bradley onto her show for an interview. It's kind of an ambush, but Bradley holds her own. Most of the discussion of what's driving our sources of information is woven into subtext because it's honestly hard to lead with that, and the drama is a little ridiculous. Mitch takes a bat to his own TV in his own home because it's showing the allegations that got him fired, but from what little I've seen, I know I want to see more. Point goes to Curtis. And I guess it's possible to enjoy this film. I took in the Agatha Christie-themed See How They Run, set in 1953, and centered on the cast of Christie's The Mousetrap, celebrating its 100th show. Hollywood types are sniffing around for movie rights, and one of them, a truly unpleasant director, is murdered and dragged out on center stage. It is possible to enjoy this film, so if you want to go, I will not spoil anything, but I did not like this film. Everything remotely good about it was in the trailer. All of the atmosphere, all of the suspense, all of the drama. Once you settle in for the production, you see how poorly all that was handled. The sets are great, but that's very little continuity. Camera drags me everywhere it goes, and it's possible the director thought my sense of discombobulation as a viewer was part of the mystery. Be fair, there's some things it did well. Toward the end, there's some excellent misdirection laid in, given the topic I'd absolutely been watching for, and I friggin' loved John Cleese's cameo, but even overlooking how oddly cast were Agatha Christie and her husband, I couldn't help feeling that the mystery itself was some hack 1980s network drama, only this week it's Agatha Christie. Won't that be a gas? The running time of 98 minutes doesn't really reduce this reaction. It actually felt quite a bit longer. I barely want to say what I think could have saved it, but if you're super concerned about spoilers, you already stopped listening to this podcast, episode 42, when I pointed out that Bruce Willis had been dead the whole time, so yeah, you can skip ahead, but I thought given the theme of the show, had the blonde rookie been a legitimate suspect at any point, hell, had she actually been the whodunit, this might have been a stronger show. I wouldn't have liked her as the murderer, but I'd have been more astonished at the end when it turns out no amount of careful attention could possibly reveal whodunit. The murders themselves were a red herring. Yeah, there were plenty of perfectly good suspects, but nah, I promised, and I'll hold. This was one of the lamest murder mysteries I've ever seen. The drop from expectation to reality was way too hard to ignore. I mean, I may watch it again if it's ever airing for free anywhere, but I'm definitely not searching it out. All of this was Get On themed, far better Agatha Christie production. A huge shout out, huzzah, and congratulations to the All About Agatha podcast, recently reviewing and ranking all 66 of the Queen of Crimes novels with a powerful 4-hour conversation, exploration, and examination of Hercule Poirot's final case, and then there was one, Curtain. I felt this episode was a tour de force. Well done. Kudos to co-host Kemper Donovan in carrying it through. Everything that podcast has been building up to for years, and the sweetest possible tribute to Kemper's late co-host, Catherine Brobeck. Hard to imagine anything I do here could be a worse spoiler than New York Times running Poirot's obituary on the front page months before the book's release, but out of respect for anyone listening to this who has not yet listened to that, go, download, listen. It really is a worthy wrap-up to a superior effort. Since 2017, Kemper and Catherine have taken on Agatha Christie's entire catalog, short stories and full-length novels, sharing their views, debates, and discussions in their podcast. Along the way, they celebrated related works, interviewed Christie scholars, and attended and hosted Christie events. Since about a year ago, since Catherine's untimely passing, Kemper has shouldered the effort as a solo project, but always shared the hosting and ranking duties in that portion of the show. could not have been easy, but the conversations he had with returning friends of the podcast has ultimately fulfilled the work these two could never have suspected they'd begun individually as children when they picked up their first copies of Agatha Christie's mysteries, when they enjoyed the David Suchet and Joan Hickson productions of her Poirot and Miss Marple adventures, their chance meeting that grew into friendship and later blossomed into this podcast and international acclaim. When I discovered it a year into their production, their conversations, debates, and fascination took me back to my own love for this author. I'd been collecting her works throughout my high school years. It helped spark my own interest in other mystery writers like Niall Marsh and Dorothy L. Sayers, Ellis Peters, Edgar Allan Poe, and naturally Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Listening to all about Agatha since probably the summer of 2018 introduced me to works by author Sophie Hannah and the excellent mystery-themed podcast She Done It by Carolyn Crampton and several other mystery writers and their ventures. It's been a joy listening to it throughout. I wanted to take exactly this amount of time to thank, celebrate, and congratulate Kemper. And in the run-up to the discussion of Curtain, I re-listened to most of their back catalog, enjoying both Catherine and Kemper and the joy that was evident in their casting this pod. So to both, to Kemper and to Catherine's memory, All About Agatha stands as an invaluable celebration of Christie's endlessly inventive mind. It is well worth tracking down for any of your favorite titles, just refreshing your memory, or enjoy it from the beginning. They put together a fantastic show. And if I'm to have any chance of completing my ongoing effort, I'd best get this into the feed. I mentioned pod fading. I think near the beginning of the summer I mentioned needing a bit of a break. I'm glad for having taken it, but I'm aware of how droppingly long this installment might have been if I'd gone into all the projects I had going on and all the media I'd consumed since the last one. So seriously, hooray for editing. That said, my blog is always open. Message me anywhere you like. I'll follow up on anything you'd like to hear more about. And with that, thank you so much for checking out my video cataloging project. You can check out my catalog listing along with audio links at VideoFuzzy.blogspot.com. For past episodes, add, subscribe, or follow VideoFuzzy everywhere you get your podcasts. Feedback is always appreciated. You can contact me through my blog or podcast sites via email tjaman1970@yahoo.com or through my VideoFuzzy pages on Facebook and Instagram, or follow me at tjvideofuzzy on Twitter. For VideoFuzzy, I'm Terry J. Aman. Happy viewing. It might be amazing, it might just be scuzzy. We'll find it together on VideoFuzzy. Still here? Hi again, sneaking in after the cut. One of those ongoing projects I mentioned involved my music collection. Over this past summer, I clicked on all the nearly 4,000 songs in my Apple Music library, a collection that goes back to 2 cassettes I had since 1989, Disintegration by The Cure and Sonic Temple by The Cult, which I converted to MP3 via sound video interface hookup from my stereo to my PC in 2006. So my music library spans a similar time frame to my media collection and has a similar pedigree, music from analog and digital sources collected together in digital format, some of which, for whatever reasons, I have not heard in years. I was able to identify 251 songs purchased between 2006 and 2009 in an Apple ID that never transferred, so I couldn't play them. Here's the shortest possible version of the last 4 years. The email carrier couldn't reestablish the email, and Apple only kept purchase histories back to 2013, so a month or so ago I accepted there was no way to access them without just buying them again. Okay, know what? Some people lost their entire homes to a hurricane. This 16 hours of songs is easily replaceable, and in a collection that spans nearly 2 weeks' worth of music, who'd even notice? 84 episodes into my media podcast, you know damn well who. Still, that seemed like a lot of money to splash out all at once. Well, I figured out a hopefully more affordable approach to the problem, which should address a second problem with my collection. If a person's got a music collection, they ought to listen to it. As my music files transferred from machine to machine, a ton of peripheral and support data fell to the wayside, including star ratings. I've got thousands of songs and they're all unrated, and some of them I know I haven't listened to since forever. First, I downloaded all the missing songs by artists beginning with A, ABBA, Aha, Alanis Morissette, then put a playlist together with all the songs in my collection by artists beginning with A. Then I started listening to them all the way through, assigning star ratings as I went. First and foremost, this is the most deeply engaged I have been with my music collection in years, and I've made some incredible discoveries which I'd love to share comments and thoughts about, none of which really fit with the thrust of this project. So, once episode 84, the one you're listening to right now, hits the feed, I'm going to cobble together some thoughts on a sister podcast called VideoFuzzy, the Soundtrack. I don't know when that will come out. There's gonna be a little downtime after this release. Not gonna lie, the past few months have been intense, and I have needed this break, and I know I don't want to make a habit of interrupting my media cataloging efforts for months at a time, but I really enjoy what I've been finding along this semi-focused rediscovery, and felt, what the hell, people like music. I know there's already 1 or 2 music-related podcasts out there covering this era, a lot of whom don't even mind finding copyright claims asserted alongside their episodes. Oops. I do mind, so I won't be including actual music in my podcast, so, oh wow, there went any potential audience I might have had. I do feel comfortable directing you to links posted by the copyright owners themselves, so that listeners can refresh their memory to the songs and artists I'm talking about, hopefully a little more directly. It's gonna be a minute, but if you're listening to this and want to click around to VideoFuzzy the soundtrack, I hope to have at least an introductory episode put together soon, with full installments to follow. Happy listening.